A little story about this graph here. You can obviously see and make sense of it. It's not a really complex one. What we're suggesting here is this point of shock. We have some potential choices, don't we? You know, the US military is doing a really interesting study at the moment on the concept of being resilient. Not just having it, but being resilient. And so one of the things about that is that there's a man called Martin Seligman who is the pioneer of positive psychology and learned optimism, and also learned helplessness. And through the Penn State University over in the States, they're putting, I think it's, if my numbers get me right, it's 40,000 drill sergeants. So frontline leadership position people are being put through this resilience program to help them have it and develop it, but then to be resilient in front of their men and women. Because one of the big issues that they're confronted with now is soldiers returning from a state of war. And look, let's admit we're taking it to the highest level now, aren't we? In terms of the trauma that some people are exposed to in the context of their work. And they're coming back, and a lot of them are suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. And they did this little survey, so you can imagine that you've got all of these drill sergeants in this first wave of the training program. And they said, put your hand up if you've heard of post-traumatic stress disorder. So put your hand up. Everyone here has, right? Everyone. Anyway, 97% of people had heard of that. And they said, well, put your hand up if you've also heard of post-traumatic stress, not disorder, but what's the other one? Growth. Who's heard of that? Post-traumatic stress growth. Okay, because what we're looking at here is they recognise that if all you're aware of is that when you're confronted with a highly stressful situation, massive amounts of change going on, if all you're aware of is that you're going to plummet into this state of, oh, I'm going to get post-traumatic stress disorder, if that's all you're aware of, it sort of enhances the possibility of it occurring. And so what they've actually done a lot of work and research into is that if we can make people aware that some people who have certain skills and abilities and strategies to cope, this is where this comes in, your coping strategies and mechanisms, because we can teach that stuff. Like that's actually a skill that you can learn to be resilient. Okay, if we can teach that, then we're going to get more people who won't go down this path, but will actually experience this. But it's not easy, but it can be done. And so they're doing a program now where all of the drill sergeants are being trained to be teachers of resiliency. And they call it the Comprehensive Soldier Fitness Program. Which I think is pretty interesting. Because automatically what I start thinking about is, oh, how do I apply that to sport? You know, because we see issues in sport these days. We see issues of significant lack of resilience. You know, for whatever reason. You know, we see young people anyway. That's a sporting thing, but we're once again living in a parallel sort of universe there, if you like. Study, and they showed this graph, and that when, in terms of a resiliency bell curve, what they are suggesting is that most people, so what this is saying is, most people are resilient, some more so than others, and some are significantly more resilient than others. So what they studied is, what do these significantly more resilient people do? And so if you think about that, tell me, what would be some things that you believe these significantly resilient people do?